Hello, sweet parents. Welcome to the When Our Adult Children Walk Away podcast. My name is Dr. Janet Steinkamp, and during each episode of When Our Adult Children Walk Away, I will provide my professional and personal insights, information and opportunities for your self-reflection and growth, tips and tricks to make every day count, and encouragement to keep moving forward. I'm here to help you dig deep and get down to the root causes so that you can find your way out of the darkness to a positive and lasting relationship. Grab your notebook and a pen, settle into your favorite chair, and let's get to it. In this episode, we are talking about the men who are the fathers and dads of our adult children, who may be estranged or experiencing a crumbling relationship with their adult children. And in the face of Father's Day, it can be especially painful. You know, the looking back over the years and questioning what happened and why did the perspective change of our adult children? Why is their experience so vastly different than what we remember? We start to question all of those things on these prime holidays that focus on our relationship with our adult children. So we know that estrangement is painful, incredibly confusing, and often surprising. It comes at us out of the blue. And we know that the experience is different for the men. It's really hard to admit that because I am a dyed-in-the-wool believer that people are people. And so why would it be different for the men? Why would it be different for the dads? And why would it be different for the adult children, respective of the dad, or in direct relationship to their dad? I want to first acknowledge that I obviously am not a dad. So I cannot speak from firsthand experience. I can talk about what the research tells us. I can tell you what the adult children have reported through various research studies. And I can tell you, based on the people that I've worked with, what the dads are talking about, what the dads are experiencing from their own stories. And third, I can talk to you about the experience of my own husband in our estrangement story. Now, I do have his permission to talk about this. I'm not going to reveal any deep, dark family, events or, anything that is revealing that he would not feel comfortable with. And our adult daughter. I mean, I've talked with Brianna as well, and she knows that we're having this conversation today. So in particular, there's one research study that I'd like to look at. The name of the article or the research study is Parent-Adult Estrangement in the United States by Gender, Race, Ethnicity, and Sexuality. It's by Drs. Rexick, Stacy, and Tomier. I believe that's how you pronounce that. The link is in the description of this episode, so if you'd like to look up the study, I'd encourage you to do that. It's really a unique study. It was published in 2022, so post-COVID, which is important. It's within the last 5 years, and I think that's very important, so we know the research is current. And it is a longitudinal study, so the data started being collected in 1979, and the interviews of participants, both parents and children, and of course it was over time, so it started when the children were very young. And the interviews extended through, I believe, 2018 or 2019. And so we really do get a retrospective set of data that was collected from thousands of people across the United States, very diverse. The population, or the sample, I should say, the sample was representative of the United States population, race, religion, sexual identity. And the findings from the study, I think, are really very valid. I'm going to read to you. I'd like to read to you some of the findings specific to dads and estrangement. I'd like to share with you some of the key findings from this study relevant to our topic today, relevant to our dads. So 26% of the respondents in this study reported estrangement from their fathers, with the average age of estrangement of being 23. It's different than moms. The adult children who were estranged reported that they separated from their moms at the age of 26. So they're estranging our dads, the men in their lives, earlier in their lives. So again, 26% of the respondents reported estrangement from the dads, where only 6% of the respondents reported a period of estrangement from their moms. So a 20% difference. The data also reflected our daughters are less likely to estrange from their mothers than the sons. The sons are more likely to estrange from their dads. The adult children who responded, who identified as Black, were less likely than white adult children to be estranged from their mothers, but more likely to be estranged from their dads. And adult children who identified as LGBT+, were more likely than heterosexuals to be estranged from their fathers. So more people were estranged from dads. They estranged earlier or cut ties earlier, and specific subgroups were more likely to estrange from their dads than their moms. Now, when we hear stories about estrangement, typically we're hearing from the moms because moms report estrangement more readily. They talk about it more readily. They're more willing to open up and explore the situation. And moms are most often the people who are pursuing help. They are the ones that go out and do the heavy lifting of finding out what's going on, what can they do about it, what can they do to reduce the length of time, the severity of the estrangement. And I suspect that has something to do with why the estrangement for moms are shorter. Dads are less likely to be the pursuers, and they're less likely to be the repair people. The majority of the estranged adult children reportedly became unestranged or reconnected to their mothers 81% of the time, to their dads 69% of the time. That's what I'm talking about when I say moms are more likely to reconnect or reunite with their adult children than dads, and it's something to consider. So here's a sidebar. If you were diagnosed with a terminal illness and the doctor said to you, you have a 69 to 81% chance of survival, what would you do to make sure you were in that group of survivors? Personally, I would do anything. I would do everything that I could to be in that survival group, right? Because the odds are in your favor to begin with. So I think I would go at it much more intensely than if the survival rates were, say, single digits. So I would ask you to ask yourself the same question about estrangement. We know from this research and from other research that duplicates this kind of finding, we know that the majority of people who cut off ties from their family come back. We know they come back to their moms first and most often. And so what would you do? To what extent would you go to make sure that things were aligned, the door was open, adult children could find their way back, they could find their way back with some dignity, with forgiveness and grace, so that they end that estrangement? What would you do? To what extent would you work? So that's kind of the question I ask myself regularly. It's what I ask my coaching clients. And I want you to ask yourself. It's so often that we hear in these Facebook groups, I'm done. I'm shutting the door. I'm never going to let them back in. Well, I think that's a defensive position for people to take. It's protective. If we say we shut the door, then we don't ever have to know whether they attempted to knock. And what I'm suggesting is that we can move on, do work, find a way to find new purpose, heal, feel good about life again without shutting that door. We do not have to make that declarative statement, I am done. I'm done with my adult child. So again, that's probably a podcast for another time. But I just want you to ask that question as we go through the rest of this episode and through our other episodes. Like any estrangement, we know that there's a continuum. At least that's my own professional belief. There's a continuum of estrangement. If you're not familiar, take a minute and go listen to the episode on the continuum of estrangement. It's fairly brief, and there's a wonderful image that you can look at that shows the continuum. It's really important to look at that because if we still have access to our adult children, if there's still a thread of connection, that one social media channel that they've not blocked us on, or the occasional phone call on holidays, some kind of shared bank account or something that keeps us connected to our adult child, then we know we still have not hit that no contact. We know that the severity of estrangement is still not as progressed as it could be. And so it gives us a little more glimmer of hope and encouragement that we can stem the tide, so to speak. We can do our work, respect their boundaries, do what we're asked to do. Perhaps that's to give them silence and distance, and have hope that when the opportunity comes, we can begin to rebuild or reconnect some level of communication. A quick review of why our adult children tell us they leave. The majority of adult children who have been surveyed, whether it's Dr. Josh Coleman or Dr. Pillemer or, I don't know, name your favorite researcher, the primary reasons that adult children tell us they leave are related to communication. Miscommunication, poor communication, disrespectful communication, too much communication, too little communication. If we can find the connection between our communication behaviors and what they are perceiving to be or telling us to be what they need in communication, that's one of the keys, right? We can begin to set the stage for a repair. Some of the other reasons people leave, your estrangement circumstances may include misunderstandings, some kind of conflict over values. Often these days you hear about children who pull away because of differences in values, sexual identity, political beliefs. People are becoming very polarized in our culture, and so that becomes reflected in our relationships between parent and adult child. A little sidebar here again. I want to remind people that when estrangement involves any type of abuse, sexual, physical, emotional abuse, and or substance use issues, substance addiction, abuse, we know that there are situations where estrangement is necessary. For our own safety and well-being, we need to separate from people who are extremely unhealthy and unsafe. And I want to say that because we know about 25% of all estrangements involve either abuse or some sort of substance issue. Knowing that, if that is something that applies to you in your circumstances, I really want to encourage you to seek mental health support and seek out a licensed, trained professional who can help you, who specializes in addiction and abuse. And often, it's extremely helpful to couple that therapy with an estrangement coach. Very few therapists today are trained and prepared to deal with estrangement. In fact, most of what we teach related to family dynamics and compromised family relationships in our pre-licensure education is counter effective in estrangement. We tell people to pursue, attempt to have conversation, intervene, stage interventions. In estrangement, those things are extremely detrimental in most cases and often can lengthen an estrangement or push that relationship off the continuum of estrangement into no contact. So I like to include that information in every episode, just an invitation to get professional help if you're dealing with addiction or abuse. Why then is there a difference in estrangement between the moms and the dads, the mothers and fathers? Now, since we're talking about fathers, our dads, in this episode, we're really going to focus on what the difference is between adult children and fathers. And of course, there isn't a single answer. There are certain themes in most estrangements, but the circumstances of each relationship are unique to that relationship. So you have to take the information I'm about to share and apply it. If it fits, please use the information and consider it in your circumstances. If it does not apply, then simply put it aside. This is not an all, one size fits all. That's just not what this is. This estrangement, this is experience of estrangement. So again, one of the primary differences between mothers and fathers in estrangement is how dads, fathers, men communicate. Now, again, remember this is a generalization, and it's generation specific. My parents tended to communicate with me as their child differently than I communicate with my children. My children were raised with family meetings, with joint decision making, with kind of a one for all and all for one attitude. My parents raised us with, because I said so. And the generations that come after us, my adult children, and how they parent their children is different. Each generation is different. In the estrangement of today, the primary age group is between early 40s to mid 60s. Those are the folks that tend to be listening to my episodes, calling me for assistance, reading the blogs. They tend to be, that generation, those ages, tend to be who is signing up for the Facebook groups, the Instagram groups, the book clubs, the groups. So those are the folks that we're talking about here, right? The men in that age range might tend to struggle to express their emotions and engage openly, meaningfully in conversation with their adult children to come to a common understanding, to hear each other, to listen, to be open-minded and accepting. The generation that we're talking about really is my generation, and perhaps yours if you're between 40 and 60. I'm a little older than 60, so I identify a little older maybe. Tended to be more stoic, keep their emotions more to themselves, put on a brave face. We taught little boys not to cry. If you skin your knee, get up and rub dirt on it, that kind of mentality. So our adult children are looking for open conversation, acceptance, respect. They're looking for people to not judge them based on their own decisions and boundaries. And so it's a very different kind of communication style, very different behaviors in communication. So that's one of the things. I'll just tell you, my husband, when my kids were little, we referred to him as Fun Bobby, because he was the guy who went out and threw the ball, rode bikes, and I was the one doing the activities of daily living, cooking. I was still a professional woman. I had my career. We just divvied up our parenting, raising our family differently than many more people do today. We were radical. Because my husband knew my kids' shoe sizes. They went to him when they had a bad day at school. He's a social worker, so of course he tends to be more emotionally, I would say, emotionally available than some. However, still, I was the one who spent most of the time taking care of the children. So another difference is how men and women experience grief. When I work with couples, most often the dad is moving between disbelief and anger. Man, they're ticked. Why should I do anything for these kids? They've been nothing but disrespectful. They've been nothing but rude and hurtful. Why should I, in any way, shape, or form, accept the situation and bend? Right. Well, it's a fair question. Moms tend to be moving back and forth between disbelief and despair. They spend very little time in anger. They may still use anger. They may still have that defense mechanism. They still, of course, will experience the frustration and feeling taken advantage of, and how dare they? Don't they know everything I've done for them? They may sit in that anger stage. Primarily, though, they sit in disbelief and despair. So that's one of the primary differences. When we're in despair, we're more likely to reach out of pain or emotions that are less aggressive. When people reach out of anger, it tends to be more explosive. Now, I'm not saying guilt or shame or any of the things that come with the despair are easier for adult children. I'm saying that's the difference of experience that I see between moms and dads. Another difference is the traditional gender roles, where dads were more likely to be the primary provider. They worked maybe longer hours, more days of the week. They came home less emotionally available because they were drained from work. There were more moms at home, working out of the home, or part-time, or maybe they this was before COVID, right, when our children were little. Maybe they worked out of the home. I knew a lot of people when I was raising my kids, a lot of moms who had jobs that they could that they could perform out of the home. So they were available after school. Kids didn't go to daycare nearly as often as they do now. And so there's this potential for disconnect where the kids perceive that to be emotionally unavailable. And the dad's experience, and the mom's, was that the dad was working. I mean, he wasn't there not because he didn't want to be. He was there because he wasn't maybe at the soccer game because he had to attend some kind of work-related event. So there's that kind of difference between moms and dads of today's adult children who are estranging. We talked about moms being the typical pursuant of help. They're the ones who typically seek the help. They reach out. They read the studies. By the time somebody calls me, they've listened to podcasts. They've maybe read Rules of Estrangement by Josh Coleman. They've maybe talked to some other people, joined some Facebook groups. And so by the time they get to me, they have sought others. They've sought help. Dads, on the other hand, are either kind of secondary, so the moms are communicating what they're learning to the dad, or the dad's kind of being drug along by their ear. They're not really interested because they're so mad. They're not ready to talk about it yet, or even give any kind of bend to accommodate what the children are asking for. The last thing that I'll mention here is a potential difference in expectation. Both the expectations of the father toward the children and the expectations of the children to the father. So where the father may be more traditionally anticipating that he will be the confidant, the counsel of the adult child. They're out to buy a house, and so they go to dad and ask his input. What do you think? Is this a good investment? What do you think of the home? Come look at it with me. Today's children, adult children, are not as likely to do that with us. They have other people they go to for counsel, or they are happy with their own counsel. They don't need us. And that's more difficult for dads. It's more of a shift and a loss for our dads. Traditionally, the mom is not the person our adult children would go to for that sort of counsel. Now, again, remember, these are gross generalizations. It may not be true in your circumstance. It's simply what the research is telling us is likely, may be contributing factors, and the things that adult children are telling us. They don't want their dads to be mad at them because they bought a house without their input, or changed their job, or moved to a different state, or made the decisions to do those things without their dad's input or their mom's input. They're just saying, don't be mad at us for that. We're capable. You raised us to be capable. Don't be mad at us. Celebrate us. Acknowledge us. Tell us we did a good job. That that the parents are proud of them for being able to do those things. Very different than when we were growing up. As we approach Father's Day, I want to acknowledge that estrangement is different for fathers, often different, that they are more frequently estranged and they're less frequently unestranged. And there are things to make that different for you. There are things that can be done that can change that experience for dad. I talk a lot about, with dads, I talk a lot about navigating that anger stage and moving into acceptance. How do you let go of that anger? Let the anger subside and allow yourself to feel the despair and the hurt and the pain. Really look that in the face and allow yourself to put it to rest so that you can ease into the acceptance and begin to move into transformation. That's where I believe the sweet spot is for dads, to be able to repair, shorten the estrangement, and reconnect. I want to encourage you dads to do a few things to take care of yourselves over Father's Day and really every day. I want you to acknowledge your feelings like we just talked about. Practice self-care. Don't give up on the activities that you so loved before the estrangement. If you're a golfer, golf. If you fish, fish. If those are things you did with your son or daughter, so be it. Keep doing them. They meant something to you before you had children, most likely, and they can mean something to you and be satisfying again without your adult children. So pursue the activities that you found satisfying before the estrangement. I want to encourage you to reflect on your relationship. Be bold and brave. Look your experience in the face. What could you have done differently? What did your adult child tell you that you didn't want to hear? That is very hard to accept. And what is the loss? What is the grief? What do you miss? Those things will not go away until you face them, experience them, and navigate them. Put them to rest and pass the grief stage of anger and then despair. Then we can move into transformation. I want you to seek help. Men are less likely to seek help than women. I think I've said that about 5 times. But men are less likely to seek help. And that isn't just an estrangement. That is in life. So if you're feeling depressed, it may be temporary. Go get some help. There's nothing wrong with seeking assistance for perhaps an antidepressant, maybe some coaching on lifestyle changes that may help you be more resilient to depression. Depression is a natural part of estrangement and situational. If you weren't depressed before the estrangement, it's very likely when you come through these feelings of grief, you will recover from the depression. It's situational. And so you may need a little help to get through that, but seek some help and support. Find other families who are experiencing estrangement so that you're not feeling alienated or alone or like that odd person, like something's wrong with you. There are a lot of people who are estranged who did nothing wrong. It is a circumstance of the generation, of communication disconnects, and can be repaired. I also want you to consider sitting in gratitude. Identify the things that you are most grateful for. And in fact, this is really radical. I know this may tick a few of you off. There are some benefits to estrangement. I'm going to tell you, it took me a long time to admit it. There was relief for me when the fighting stopped. I missed them. I mourned for them. I was distraught for 2 years. I'm 11 years in, and there's still parts of the changes in my relationship with my adult child that I grieve. There are still aspects that I miss. And yet, during the time she was gone, there was a sense of relief in the peace and the quiet the fighting was gone for a minute. And 2 years is a long minute, 3 years. However, find places where you can be grateful. Find things you're grateful for. Your job, your spouse, your friends, your neighbor, your home, your career, your health, your physician if you have health issues. Find the gratitude in life and sit in gratitude. It is much easier to navigate anger and despair when you sit in gratitude. When gratitude comes first, it's it deflects that anger and lets you sit in the emotion much more comfortably. So practice gratitude. It's necessary to do these things to understand our own individual contributions to estrangement, to the fracturing of our relationship. And it is my belief that in a relationship between two people participate in the estrangement. Two people contribute in the fracturing of the relationship. How we contributed and where and when is the discovery. And it doesn't have to be big and bad. It can be very small. It can be ongoing and over time. It can be a misunderstanding that was never clarified. How many of us learn from our spouse after years of being together, or our partner, that they don't like oatmeal when we've been giving them oatmeal every morning, so to speak? That's just a kind of a funny example, but you get my point. What might have been going on that we saw differently and we just didn't understand? I want you to think about how you can shift your behavior and your experience in communication from, for example, feeling sorry for someone or pity to empathy. Very different experience for the recipient, for the person receiving your communication. How can we move from expressing permission or not permission to acceptance and simply support, even when we disagree? How can we move our communication to express understanding, respect, pride in our adult children when we don't agree with what they're doing or how they're doing it? I want you to think about those things, because that is where the power is for repair and reconstruction. If you're having trouble, I would encourage you to keep listening to the podcasts. Give me a call. I'm happy to meet with you and talk. My first session with people is complimentary. I try to keep it to 30 minutes. Oftentimes we go to an hour, but I want to give you an opportunity to get to know me and me to get to know you and see if there's a way we can work together to be helpful. If not, there's no shame in that. I have a number of resources I'm happy to refer people to. Again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Ultimately, every situation in estrangement is unique. All of our circumstances are different than another person, just as our relationship is unique. So, dads, it's important for you to take care of yourself. It's important for you to recognize that estrangement is different for you. Your relationship with your adult child was different to begin with. And you do have power and control in this estrangement. There are ways to find peace and satisfaction in life without our adult children and without answers to all of the questions. There are ways to move through that anger into acceptance and then begin to transform into a better version of our parent self. To move from parent as leader and primary decision maker into parent partner. And that's what our adult children are asking us to be. So I want to thank you for listening to the episode. I want to encourage you to jump over to the When Our Adult Children Walk Away website. There's a place for you to contact me and share ideas. I'd love to hear ideas for different or future podcast episodes. I'm always interested to know in what you found helpful in this episode and other episodes, and what you found to be really confusing or make no sense to you whatsoever, or simply to be wrong. I'd love to hear your feedback. So again, I wish you well. I want to encourage you to be bold. Be brutally honest with yourself. Take care of yourself. And know that you are not alone. That estrangement is alienating, and you are not alone.